I'm Dr. Pete Economo, the East Coast psychologist.
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin, the West Coast psychologist.
And this is When East
Meets West.
Well, there's no question in my mind that any kind of performance is related to what the brain is telling you to do, whether good, bad, or indifferent. What do you think about performance psychology, Nikki?
Well, this is definitely your area of expertise, given that you are a sports psychologist. But yeah, no, well, I mean, I guess I would say, I don't think there's anything we do our brain doesn't want to get involved in. So yeah, when it comes to do, I guess what I would say to doing something that's got a public element to it, where either, like the folks you work with, like athletes, where they're literally like performing, they're doing a sport in front of like thousands of fans, or I don't know, performance like at work, like maybe you're being like evaluated by your boss or whatever. Yeah, I think like the brain gets turned up in terms of like turns the dial up or the volume up on.
The volume goes up.
It tries to evaluate, what we're doing.
It sure does. And it's not that, because it has nothing to do with, first of all, I don't even really see myself as a sports psychologist, but I think any psychologist or any person working in any kind of behavioral health arena is looking at performance. And you are too. There's no question that you are.
Oh yeah, I know. But I'm more thinking like, just the content of what you focus on. You know what I mean? It's like a bit, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say like every session I'm doing, like I'm focusing on performance. Like that wouldn't be the case. But it's definitely something that something part of human experience. I definitely talk about it, but I think
me
you talk
either.
About it more
than
I do.
Maybe, but I don't either.
Well,
and I think, that's one important differentiation, actually, because in the world of sports psychology or sport and performance psychology, there are people with different schools of thought, like anything else. But in particular, the biggest distinction exists between people that are doing this work that say it's just performance, and there's another school that says it's behavioral health and performance.
Okay.
And so, as you might imagine, I live in it's behavioral health and performance world.
Yes, I was going to say, and the latter. Because we don't. I like to say we don't throw out. I say to my students, I always go, we don't throw out any babies with any bathwater. Like all the human stuff, right? Like all the things we're gonna like take care of, like all the things in a consideration. Yeah.
So there's some people that are just dressing the babies and they're not doing nothing with the bathwater, and I think you you got to do both. So
you got to do both.
You got to do both. I believe. I mean, there's obviously going to be people out there who don't agree with that. So that's why. So to break that down, there are people that just do mental skills training, or just mental performance, and that can be visualization. That's what it was back in the day, sort of like second wave. I think I believe that there's a little bit less and less of that happening now, and here's why. Because mindfulness now exists and is on, everyone's aware of that. And so what I found, both as a mindful practitioner, a Zen teacher, and psychologist, that how are you going to have someone visualize if we can't remain and sustain attention? Right. So like,
right. Very, very good point.
It was just the scientist in me that was like, so you're walking somebody through a visualization who can probably maintain attention for about 10 to 15 seconds. So if you're trying to do like even a football play is longer than 10 to 15 seconds, or like for me with swimming, if I'm doing a 200, that's about a minute and 30 seconds or, so to think about walking someone through that for that amount of time, they are going to get distracted. And that's why mindfulness has to come in for the brain to exercise it, to understand how to then, how it affects performance.
Right. Absolutely. And so in addition to mindfulness and, maybe sometimes using visualization with folks, like what are some of the other things that you do to help improve or enhance performance?
Well, one of the things we've said before in different episodes is education. And so education and preparation are key. So it's a lot of like intangibles. So another thing that comes up is like confidence. Which is linked. So everything's linked, but sort of intangible. Like, so, because let me just ask you this, like, what is confidence to you? And like, I'm sure you've worked with someone who was not confident. And so, like, how would you maybe work through that with somebody?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's well, obviously, as you would imagine, similar to you, I talk about confidence a lot with people. And
Yeah.
so what most people will say to me is, I'll do this thing that's hard once I feel confident. And I'll
Right.
say, yeah, that would be really nice, wouldn't it? Like it would be nice
Yeah.
I'm like, unfortunately, we build confidence
Yeah.
by doing the thing that's hard when we feel scared.
That's right.
So I'm like, you got to do the hard thing first, and that builds confidence. Confidence comes after. We have to be willing on the front end to actually not feel confident and take a risk.
Yeah, I love that. And one of this metaphor is, hey Shakira, if you're listening, you can maybe be like a sponsor for us. But I always say
dream, yeah.
Dream, yeah, total dream. Hey Paisa, mira, ven para acá.
Yeah, I'm like, please. Wow. Anyway, go ahead.
But I would say like even she would feel. I don't know this, but I would assume that she's going to feel slightly nervous before she goes to perform in front of hundreds of thousands of people.
Sure,
because that's just human. Thank you, Jinx.
Yeah.
And so, that's performance. So performance psychology is simply learning that what you're going to feel, and kind of similarly to like, also like compassion, having compassion for yourself when you're about to perform, understanding anxiety and panic, other episodes that we've all, that we've covered on here. All of that links. And so a lot of times in every one of my offices, which we've talked about, I have a whiteboard. You probably do too. Or no,
not anymore. Well, no, I do draw things still, but I'll like use it on iPad. But I know. But yes, I do like to draw. I do like to draw visuals for people. Yeah.
The reason you don't have a whiteboard is because your offices are so pretty that now they don't fit with the aesthetic. I know that's true.
Also, yeah,
I know
the aesthetic, but yeah.
But the whiteboards are important because it's, especially like performers are many can be visual, and so being able to like show the pattern of like how the physical sensations sort of like tap into the brain, and then the brain gets all crazy thinking this is like so we just education is a big piece of the performance work as well. As we've said before, like it's also important just to rule out any other sort of medical things going on.
Sure.
And just
like if things are getting in the way of performance, you're saying, absolutely.
Yep. I think we do that always, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Though it's always a good reminder, just because we don't. We just want to stay curious, right? Like the body is a a complicated. It's a complicated. We're complicated organisms here, but
yes, we are.
So we want to pay attention to all the possibilities of what could be contributing to something not working the way we want it to. But what was coming to my mind as you were talking, Pete, is how we talk a lot about in this podcast about human brains can get rigid about anything, and because this is like, I guess I'll say it's sort of like we're like a cross section of things going on in the culture right now, but like because mindfulness is something that people are more aware of these days, right, and understand the benefits of it. And because, at least for Pete and I, we're Americans, we work in American culture and society. Our society tends to be over-attached to the value of productivity.
Yeah.
One thing that I think we have to actually really watch when it comes to performance is, there's been a lot of, I've read some articles about this, where companies and corporations are trying to utilize mindfulness to like push performance. Like it's got to make to basically make more money, and I do think, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to improve performance. Obviously, that's like a useful thing in a lot of contexts, but we also want to watch that of like, it can't be like more, better. Like we got to make room for not doing things perfectly, knowing what our limitations are and things like that. So I'm wondering if that's something that has been coming up at all in your work, like specifically with performance, like people sort of want to like keep, pushing the pedal to the metal around that stuff.
No, yes, because it's the culture we live in, especially here in the West, so I think that in the East that would be less common, but in the West it's right. When you were saying that, what came to my mind was motivational interviewing, which some companies got a hold of, and they were trying to like utilize this to just manipulate some performance,
which is a bummer, because it's like these, especially motivational interviewing, by the way, if listeners aren't familiar with it, is a wonderful, wonderful evidence-based treatment, often used with substance abuse and dependence. But it's about it's really quite mindful in a lot of ways. Like that's what's such a bummer. It's like it's not intended to like get somebody to do something. It's actually like focusing on somebody's inherent choice and willingness in moving their life in the direction they want to go.
Just like our episode on willingness, So
yes, 100%, yeah.
I'll approach it, as you might not be surprised, behaviorally. But then I always think about things holistically, strength-based, and from a wellness lens. So I think holistically means that it's mind, body, spirit. It's got to be everything about the person, general practitioner involved, whoever else needs to be involved. Has to be strength based, so looking at, you can't make like a lefty righty right away, and so if you just have to work with what is and just build upon the strengths, not everyone's meant to be an extrovert, for example. So some people, performance is just going into a business meeting. It doesn't have to be Shakira and on a stage. It could just be about managing a boardroom. And then wellness is like all the other stuff that's involved with that also feeds into performance. So you have to have, like Tom Brady has this whole army of people caring for him, because that's what you need, to truly, you don't need it, but obviously at that level, when you have those resources, that will contribute to performance significantly.
Yeah. So it sounds like again, not surprising, but you are working to actually just help people work within not only realistic expectations of oneself, but also what's workable for their particular life and situation, right? Not everybody's Tom Brady or Shakira. That's okay. That doesn't mean you can't work on being the most effective you in whatever context that is and whatever that means.
Oh, what a beautiful way to reframe that, Nikki.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, so, this is just a little introduction to what performance is. Everyone's doing it all the time. And so maybe just listeners, think about where your performance is. Can you integrate it more fully into your life so that you're intentionally, just like in a mindful way, on purpose, stepping in, performing, and letting go and accepting where you're at.
This has been When East Meets West. I'm Dr. Pete Economo.
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin. Be present, be brave.
This has been When East Meets West. All material is based on opinion and educational training of Drs. Pete Economo and Nikki Rubin.
Content is for informational and educational purposes only.